Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your stack of information and turn it into something you can really use. And you've tasked us with a really compelling note today, a full analysis of the modern NBA rivalry between the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers.
And specifically for this 2025-26 season, which has been something else.
It's been wild. So let's get into it. Our mission here is to cut through the noise and, pull out the key stuff, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the tactics that are going to swing this matchup.
Right.
And for you catching up, this is the first time we've looked at this rivalry since both teams had these huge roster changes. And the sources are clear. These franchises are built on totally different ideas now.
That's really the heart of it, I think. When you synthesize all the expert reviews we've looked at, the history, the recent games, all of it, what just jumps off the page is this philosophical battle.
The philosophical battle, I like that.
Yeah, you have the Knicks, who are now, you could argue, the best example in the league of structured defense and just systemic consistency. And they're going right up against the Sixers, who are all about sheer explosive potential from their top-tier guys.
Structure versus explosion. That's a great way to frame it. It's the perfect lens for this. So before we get into the tactical side of this season, we have to start with the history.
You have to.
Because rivalries like this don't just pop up overnight.
No, and the longevity here means the Sixers, they still have the historical bragging rights, at least in the regular season.
Right.
If you look at just the all-time series numbers, Philly's sitting at around 265 wins to the Knicks' 212 or so.
That's a pretty big gap, built over generations.
It is.
But, history is. It's a fun footnote, but it's not really a blueprint for today. The sources really hammer this point home. The modern rivalry has started to tilt pretty decisively toward New York.
For sure. Even before all these big moves this season, if you look at the last 5 seasons, the Knicks had a slight edge. They went something like 11-8 against Philly.
And that slight edge became, like you said, a blueprint back in the 2024 playoffs.
Oh, absolutely. That first-round matchup where the Knicks won 4-2, that was the ultimate test of their whole system. The sources say that series wasn't just a win. It was proof. It cemented the idea that the Knicks' depth and their late-game structure could just overwhelm a team that relies so heavily on its stars.
Even a team with an MVP candidate.
Exactly. That's really the origin story for the tension we're seeing right now.
Okay, which brings us to the most recent snapshot. December 19th, 2025, at MSG. The Sixers win 116-107. Why is that one game so important here?
Because it perfectly, and I mean perfectly, illustrates that whole explosion idea for the Sixers.
How so?
They won that game without Joel Embiid, their franchise player. Tyrese Maxey was just unstoppable. 30 points, 8 assists. He basically took apart the Knicks' entire defensive scheme by himself. It showed that even without their anchor, that Sixers offense can be lethal.
Okay, but hang on. The sources talk about the Knicks having better consistency, yet they lose a big game at home to their rival who's missing their best player. Where does that consistency actually show up?
That's a great question. And the sources suggest consistency doesn't mean you win every game.
Okay.
It means their structure gives them a consistent level of performance, regardless of whether some guy on the other team goes off.
So it's about the process, not just the result of one game.
Exactly. The overall trend in their recent matchups shows the Knicks have better control over the game's flow. They're less reliant on just getting hot from 3. They force the Sixers into tough, late-clock shots, which is something Philly's system is not always built to handle.
And that structural advantage, it's all built on their new core. Let's dig into their strengths. And we have to start with the elephant in the room. Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges.
You have to. Those additions just completely change their ceiling. It solidifies their main strength, balanced scoring, and real depth.
So Brunson is still the guy.
Brunson is still the guy, the main playmaker, the closer, but now he has real diversified help. Towns gives him that inside scoring threat, and he can space the floor, and Bridges is just elite two-way versatility.
It's not a one-man show anymore.
Not at all. It's a terrifyingly well-rounded machine.
And a big part of that machine is defense. The analysis points to their second major strength, which is that two-way defensive depth. They have elite defenders everywhere.
They do. And the sources specifically call out OG Anunoby's defense. They note how his presence just elevates the entire team in those crucial moments late in the game.
We saw that in the 2024 playoffs.
Yeah.
His stops on Embiid basically defined that series.
Those are the details that stick with you. And their third strength, this idea of rotation resilience, that's a direct credit to Coach Mike Brown. The sources really emphasize his ability to manage the rotation has kept them competitive, even with injuries.
So they don't just fall off a cliff when Brunson sits.
Exactly. Because the system, with guys like McBride stepping up, it's designed to absorb those kinds of hits.
But, every structure has its weak points. And for the Knicks, the biggest worry the sources bring up is injury risk. If you're a team built on consistency and balance, losing just one of those guys, Towns or Bridges, it messes with the whole system's chemistry.
And it throws off the offensive rhythm completely, which ties right into their second weakness, that variability in their perimeter shooting.
Right. They've gotten better, but they can still go cold.
For sure. The sources point out that on nights when their bench shooters in particular are cold, they really struggle from deep. And in a rivalry with so many close games, if the shots aren't falling, that can be a huge problem.
Okay, let's switch gears. Let's pivot to the other side. The Philadelphia 76ers and all that firepower, their biggest strength is, without a doubt, their explosive scoring potential.
Oh, unequivocally. We just saw it with Maxey. He can run that offense with just hyper efficiency. He provides this unbelievable punch. Even when Embiid is out or limited, he's the engine of that explosion philosophy.
And that leads to their second strength, which is youth and upside.
Yeah, the sources get pretty excited about the newer guys like VJ Edgecombe and some of the other role players who can just give you instant offense.
An energy guy.
Exactly. Edgecombe brings that athletic energy that can just disrupt a defense. That upside means the Sixers can be, they can be devastatingly unpredictable.
And yet, here's the big problem the sources flagged for Philly. It's their consistency with their star trio Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George.
It's a massive issue.
The analysis highlights some pretty concerning cohesion problems. Paul George is an amazing talent, but the sources suggest that even when all three are healthy, it just hasn't translated into consistent, high-level play.
And that is a fundamental problem. If you look at why it's a problem, the sources suggest it's a mix of ball dominance and defensive communication.
They all need the role.
They're all alpha scorers, right? They just haven't consistently found that perfect flow where all three can be at their best without stepping on each other's toes. And you see it most in their defensive rotations.
Which leads right to their other main weakness, defensive issues and just costly turnovers.
The Sixers are so prone to these huge defensive lapses, especially after halftime, and they commit these turnovers that just absolutely drain all their momentum.
And the sources say that's the moment where the Knicks structure just takes over. They capitalize on every single mistake.
It really raises the big question for the Sixers. Can all that talent overcome these structural problems? And that brings us perfectly to the X factors.
The specific matchups that decide these games.
Exactly. The little things that decide if this ends in a Knicks win or, a Sixers blowout.
All right, let's define the battlefield. The analysis points to three big X factors. First, Knicks guard play versus Philly's perimeter defense. Jalen Brunson, with his basketball IQ, he becomes an absolute predator when Philly's defense breaks down. If Embiid is out, Brunson just surgically picks apart all the open space they leave.
And what's so fascinating is the reverse of that. Philly's transition offense against the Knicks' half-court defense. Maxey and Edgecombe are just phenomenal getting downhill in the open court. So while the Knicks pride themselves on that set half-court D,
Philly's goal has to be to not let them set it.
Precisely, to pressure them before they can get set. If Philly wins the transition battle, it basically cancels out the Knicks' biggest strength.
And the third X factor, which we kind of touched on, is bench production. This is where the non-stars become so important.
So important. For the Knicks, it's guys like Miles McBride and short system players who provide continuity.
And for the Sixers?
For the Sixers, it's about instant spark, volatility. It really comes down to which bench can win that momentum battle. That often decides the fourth quarter.
So if we synthesize all of this, what are the paths to victory here?
Well, the expert consensus in the sources is pretty decisive on one thing. The Knicks' better overall balance, their deeper roster, and their defensive versatility. That gives them the structural edge in a long 7-game series.
Their style is just built for the playoffs.
It is built for the grind.
And for the 76ers, their upside is huge, but it's conditional.
It is. Their main path to victory has two things they absolutely must do. One, Embiid has to come back healthy and stay on the floor.
Non-negotiable.
And two, they have to tighten up those defensive rotations and solve that star trio cohesion problem. If they do that, their offense is just overwhelming. They can flip these games.
So Ultimately, the analysis boils down to this. The Knicks win close games more often because of their system, their defense, and their execution late in games.
It's just dependable.
Whereas the Sixers, they're still maybe the most dangerous team in the conference if they can unlock all that talent.
A very big if. They're constantly haunted by those internal issues and the turnovers that just neutralize their potential.
So even though Philly holds the historical lead, recent seasons clearly favor New York's style, their roster stability in today's NBA.
And that brings us right back to where we started. That core tension, structure and consistent defense from the Knicks versus that explosive but sometimes inconsistent talent from the 76ers.
And that battle of philosophy is exactly why this rivalry is so compelling for you to follow.
For sure.
And here's a final thought for you to chew on as you process all this. The sources specifically flagged the 76ers star trio, cohesion, Embiid, Maxey, and George, as their biggest hurdle. So if the Sixers can't fix those internal issues, does the sheer talent of those three actually become a liability over the long term instead of an advantage? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Thank you for sharing your sources with us.
I'll catch you next time.